Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Pokémon Film Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing the 7th animated film to be released as part of the Pokémon franchise, Destiny Deoxys. And again, much like other films in this vlog that I've looked at so far, the first time I heard about this film was just through the ads. Although, unfortunately, like other films on this list, I didn't actually see this film when I was a kid. The closest I ever came to watching it in full when I was younger was catching the very tail end of this film when it was on Cartoon Network. And that's not really enough to form an opinion on a movie, is what I'm saying. After that, I did technically watch the film in full when Hellfire Comms had their own site once upon a time, and I did wind up watching the movie through that. But the name of the channel is Hellfire Comms, so it had commentators speaking over it, and so as a result, I saw the visuals of the movie, but couldn't really form my own opinion on it because I only got half of the viewing experience. I actually needed to hear what was going on screen, and while I do like Hellfire Comms commentators, seriously, check them out, they're fun, I like them. And fortunately, having them commentate over a movie that I hadn't seen kind of hampered my experience in being able to absorb the movie. Again, no offense to Hellfire Comms. I'm the dumbass that decided to watch their commentary before watching the film for myself, so it's my fault entirely. Point is, though, I had heard of the movie, I just hadn't had a chance to see it. Well, thankfully, much like previous films that we've talked about so far, I did manage to get my own chance to see this film when I got the Pokémon 4 movie collector set, which again, is this one right here. And so I was finally able to watch the movie in full and form my own opinion of it. And first impressions of it were positive, so to speak. But do I still hold that opinion now? Well, let's take a look at the film and find out. So, of course, we gotta get to our long-ass plot summary, and as you do, this film does have a typical Pokémon prologue. In this case, the film opens in the North Pole, as we see a science team out there studying, I don't fucking know, electrical waves, mating habits of Pokémon, studying snow, don't care. They don't really say what they're out there for. However, the head of the exposition, one Professor Lund, is there with his assistant Yuko and his son, a young boy named Tori, who, well, runs away from the science team because he wants to go see the local Pokémon, which are a bunch of seal-type Pokémon, and if you expect me to know what these Pokémon are called, guess again, because this is getting to the point in Pokémon where my knowledge of what Pokémon are what is starting to become a little bit more limited. So I apologize that there are points in this or future vlogs where I look at a Pokemon and go, that's a Pokemon, without being able to give a name. Although some of them look like walruses. I don't know. But either way, Tori wants to go see the Pokemon because, well, he thinks they're awesome, and he wants to just kind of take them all in and just kind of, do kid stuff with Pokemon. He thinks they're cute animals, even if they look big and ferocious. However, as he's looking over an entire herd, so to speak, of Pokemon, something unexpected happens. You see, a meteorite has crashed down to the Earth and landed right at the North Pole, causing a massive explosion and also causing a little minor earth shake. Not an earthquake, just causes an earth shake, and as a result, it causes this herd of seal/walrus Pokemon to just kind of go on a stampede. And unfortunately, Tori kind of gets caught in the middle, as the resulting shake caused I guess a hill or cliff, or not a cliff, but a hill he was standing on to collapse, and he ends up falling right into the middle of this stampede. And so he gets to bear the full brunt of these Pokemon as they're just running off. And while all the Pokemon do intentionally avoid him, well, it's still a pretty scary sight for a kid his age, and as a result, he kind of freaks out and passes out right there. Thankfully, his dad comes in and manages to pull him out of the crowd because, well, he was watching his son and keeping an eye on him, but it raises the question, what crashed to Earth? Well, the answer to that is a Pokémon. Specifically, the Pokemon that this film is named for, Deoxys, this strange red and blue Pokemon with, I guess, red and blue tendrils for arms, and what looks like a purple stone in its chest. And the reason why it's come to Earth is because it's looking for a specific something that's located at the North Pole. And Deoxys actually finds this something right away. As buried in the ground, it finds a green stone that looks very similar to the purple one it has in its chest. And as it holds the stone, it begins resonating with it, so to speak, as it seems to scan it and it releases what looks like its own aurora that interacts with the stone itself, and we see that Deoxys holding the stone close is causing a reaction. Before anything can actually happen, another Pokemon arrives on the scene. Specifically, the legendary Pokemon Rayquaza, and before I go any further, yes, I am aware in the film that his name is pronounced Rayquaza. The thing, yeah, I kind of need to address this elephant in the room. Apparently, Rayquaza's name has been mispronounced for years, and it's only rather recently that Pokemon has officially stated, no, it's pronounced Rayquaza. So regardless of how they pronounce it in this movie, I'm going to keep calling him Rayquaza. And before anyone asks, yes, that I'm also going to be applying that same thing when we look at the Arceus movie. I know they pronounce it Arceus there, and to me that sounds natural, but apparently it really is pronounced Arceus. Even the games have confirmed this, so when I get to that movie, I will be using that name as well. So for any Arceus fans, I apologize if I am getting on your nerves. Trust me, I would have been there with you, but if I'm gonna accept Rayquaza, then I gotta accept Arceus as well. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, back to the movie. So anyway, Rayquaza attacks Deoxys. Why? Well, you see, when Deoxys is meteor, asteroid, whatever, went crashing to Earth, it nearly hit Rayquaza. And the thing is, Rayquaza is a legendary wind Pokemon, and usually spends the majority of his time just kind of circling Earth's atmosphere, doing his own thing. So it looks at Deoxys crashing into Earth and thinks, okay, some jackass is stepping on my turf. I gotta do something about that. And so Rayquaza sees Deoxys as a threat and, well, just basically wants him dead. And so, as a result, Deoxys kind of has to put aside what he's doing with this green stone and does battle with Rayquaza. Unfortunately, though, neither Pokemon know what the word collateral damage means, okay, not word, phrase, as their battle actually extends to the campsite that Professor Lund's science team is using, and a lot of equipment and tents are basically caught in the crossfire and damaged as a result. It's thankfully through this we do learn a bit more about Deoxys and his capabilities. Specifically, we learn one of his weaknesses. You see, Deoxys sees through electrical waves. Basically, he doesn't see the world the way you and I see the world. He only sees it by its electrical patterns. When Rayquaza first appeared to Deoxys, he was able to make out his form rather well enough, but the instant Rayquaza crashed into the science team's campsite and subsequently damaged the equipment, the malfunctioning equipment is now actually affecting Deoxys' vision, so now he doesn't know where the hell Rayquaza is, which in turn does allow Rayquaza to actually get in a few more hits on Deoxys, though this is also where we see another one of Deoxys' abilities. He can shapeshift to a limited degree. Basically, Deoxys has a total of, I think, 4 forms. He has a primary form, but he has an attack form, which he dons whenever he goes into battle. He has a speed form, which it says what it is on the tin, and a defense form. All of him, a defense form. And so basically we see that Deoxys kind of shuffles through all these forms as the battle goes along. And eventually Deoxys does seem to manage to knock Rayquaza out over the sea, but as Deoxys is regaining his composure, so too does Rayquaza, and so before Deoxys can go back and grab the green stone, Rayquaza actually does a sneak attack on Deoxys as it flies out of the ocean and unleashes what looks like a hyper beam right in Deoxys' face point blank. And the end results? Deoxys kinda dies. I say kinda. Another ability that we saw Deoxys showcase during the battle is that if any part of him is damaged or hurt, he can regenerate. Case in point, at one point Rayquaza did manage to take off one of his arms, so to speak, and he was able to just grow the body part back no problem. So while Rayquaza's attack does destroy Deoxys' physical form, his purple stone is fine, and thus it ends up falling into the ocean where he'll hopefully be able to regenerate. But to Rayquaza, dead is dead, and he basically thinks that he's won this battle before flying off. In the meantime, Professor Lund and co. realize what the hell they just witnessed, and they decide that they need to do further testing, as they manage to find the green stone that Deoxys had, and basically they wrap up their research, grab whatever they can, and just basically head back to their hometown, a city called LaRue City, bringing with them the green stone. As such, for 4 years, Professor Lund basically began studying the stone, and it turns out that this stone is sort of connected to Deoxys, as it seems to radiate with the same energy that Deoxys emitted. And as such, for these 4 years, for 4 years they've been studying the stone and trying to find ways to activate it, so to speak. Rejuvenate it, because if it's connected to Deoxys, then maybe they can find a way to, well, revive it, so to speak, if they can sync it up with a specific wavelength of the aurora that Deoxys creates. And they do eventually manage to find that aurora, though they unfortunately can't generate enough energy to wake up this stone, because unfortunately the machine they're using to generate the energy has a part that's malfunctioning, so they got to replace it. So kind of put a pin in that. But as for Tori, well, going back to how he was caught in the middle of that Pokemon stampede, he's unfortunately now gotten a bit of trauma, as from that one experience, he has now developed an irrational fear of all Pokemon. Big, small, threatening, or adorable, he just freaks the hell out if any of those Pokemon get close to him. And as a result, he's just been kind of keeping his distance, both from Pokemon and people, as well. The people who most usually have a Pokemon are Pokemon trainers, so you kind of want to stay away from the people who train and battle with the very things you're afraid of. However, Tori is not friendless, as some days he goes out to what looks like a little garden that's on the grounds of the research lab that his dad works at, and in the garden is what looks like a strange green aurora that he just periodically talks to and just shares his experiences with. So he at least has someone there to talk to. In the meantime, though, this is still a Pokemon movie, so where the hell are Ash and Co? Well, they're actually on a train right into LaRue City. You see, in the middle of LaRue City is a tower called, well, the Battle Tower, and the whole point of it is that trainers go there and just duke it out for funsies. It's a tournament. It's televised all across the city. It's just all around fun time. So Ash wants to go there because he wants to do battles. He wants to do battles, son. And so they arrive in LaRue City, and we find that the city is actually a technological wonder. It's got machines set up all over the place that vend whatever food you need, like hot dogs, hamburgers, ice cream, and so on. They've got garbage cans that immediately that react to movements. All you have to do is get close, and it just scans your presence, and you can just throw away your garbage. And then likewise, and they even have little security cube bots that we basically keep track of everything going in and out of the city. To the point where when Ash and Co arrive, they actually take all their pictures and print them out passports so they can get around the city and use them to scan everything. We also see this place has moving sidewalks, which Ash almost gets caught in because he didn't fully expect it. However, on the way, Ash and Co end up running into another group of trainers who, I'm pulling out my phone for this because I wrote their names down, because I'm just going to say right now, I genuinely do not remember any of these guys' names beyond what I wrote down, because they are just side characters who were only created for this movie. But anyway, now one of these trainers is a guy named Raph. Yeah, I think his name is Raph. Yeah, Raph, who is actually the one that saved Ash from the sidewalk with his Blaziken. His two sisters, Audrey and Catherine. This big guy, this kind of chubby guy named Sid, and later on we meet a girl named Rebecca, who basically specializes in whose specialty Pokemon is a Metagross, and who is kind of a science geek herself. They're all like Ash and Co. They're also out-of-towners who are here to take part in battles at the Battle Tower. And immediately Raph just starts throwing shade at Ash for not fully understanding LaRue City, to the point where Ash challenges him to a Pokemon battle, which Raph accepts, though he says they gotta do it at the Battle Tower. So Ash is more than happy to meet him there. As such, Ash and Co go to the Battle Tower, and Ash separates from the group so he can get registered, but he doesn't really know his way around, so he gets lost. However, as he wanders around, he happens to run into Tori, and while he wants to ask Tori for directions, all Tori has to do is just see the Pikachu riding on Ash's shoulder, and he freaks the hell out and makes a dash right for an elevator. Of course, Ash has no idea why he's freaking out, so he follows him and manages to catch the elevator as well. But even as Ash tries explaining himself and what he wants out of Tori, well, the instant that the elevator gets to his explorer, Tori tries to make a run for it. But it turns out that the floor that the elevator stopped at was where registration was. Sort of. Basically, this is the entrance to get into the Battle Tower, and since the city is sort of automated with high-tech advancements, all one has to do to be registered is just walk into the arena with their passport, and the passports get scanned. Ergo, they immediately get registered and they can participate in a Pokemon battle. And unfortunately for Tori, he and Ash get registered together as a tag team. And as such, they end up going into the arena of the Battle Tower with their opponents being Raph and Sid, with Ash's friends up there in the stands already watching. As such, Ash thinks that this is his only opportunity to fight Raph, and so he's all in on this. But that's when Tori has to break it to him that he's not a Pokemon trainer. He doesn't have any Pokemon. As such, Ash tries to help him out by lending him one of his Pokemon, but once the battle gets going and Raph and Sid send out their Pokemon, well, unfortunately, Tori's reluctance to even be a part of any of this causes him to just freeze up and not even give any commands to the Pokemon he was given. And again, I do not know the Pokemon's name. It was like a salamander thing. It was like a salamander thing. I don't remember its name. Okay, again, I only know so many Pokemon. Cut me some slack here. So apologies in advance that I don't remember the name of the Pokemon. I know, I'm sorry, it's bugging me now. But either way, Ash and Tori end up losing the battle, much to Ash's kind of irritation, not to the point where he's like angry at Tori or anything, but once he and Tori end up leaving the arena, Tori just makes a run for it. Well, sort of. You see, as the battle was going on, Tori's dad, Professor Lund, wound up seeing the battle being shown on television, and so he wanted to be there to greet his son and congratulate him for even taking part in the battle, but again, Tori says that him taking part in that battle was just an accident, so he didn't really want to be a part of it before he runs off. As such, Ash and his friends end up meeting with Professor Lund and his assistant, and I said her name, Yuko, wasn't it? It's Yuko, right? Sorry, this is gonna keep bugging me, so I'm just gonna look it up right now because I know I wrote it down. Right? No, I wrote it down here somewhere. Yep, it's Yuko. Sorry, I'm sorry. Anyway, Yuko does explain to Ash and Co about Tori's phobia of Pokemon, and so Ash and Co hear this and do feel sorry for him, but Yuko says it's fine, and ultimately she says that she knows that Tori does seem to care about Pokemon. It's just that his fear keeps him at a distance, and she thinks that if he got the chance to get to know Pokemon without things being like thrown in his face, then he might be able to make an actual friendship. So as such, Ash, being Ash, wants to immediately go and help Tori because, well, it's, like I said, it's just Ash. And his friends concur, and so Ash tries hunting Tori down. In the meantime, though, Tori does end up running into a few other residents of LaRue City, specifically two Pokemon known as Minun and Plusle, which are the Gen 3 Pika clones. And they're fucking adorable. Okay, I want them. Give me to them. I want the plushies, damn it. Whatever. But anyway, basically, how he meets up with these two is that Minun and Plusle were playing around with the garbage cans with how they opened, Minun was able to just jump off the lid whenever he wanted to. And so, unfortunately, though, things kind of went awry as Minun got his head stuck in one of the garbage cans. And so, while Tori is a little hesitant to get near these Pokemon, he doesn't want to ignore Minun in his time of need, and so he follows Plusle and manages to force open the garbage can enough so that Minun's able to get his head out. Unfortunately, when the two Pokemon try to thank Tori by trying to give him a hug, Tori immediately jumps out of their way and just says I'm glad I could help before running away because again he's afraid of Pokemon. As such, Tori ends up running back to the gardens where he meets up with his Aurora friend and basically talked about his day. But the thing is, Ash wound up finding Tori while he was in the process of helping Minun and Plusle, and so he followed Tori back to the garden. And while Ash doesn't see who Tori was talking to, he did hear Tori talking to someone, and while he tries questioning Tori about it, Tori basically clams up and tries running away again. And the only reason he doesn't get very far is because, unfortunately, he gets startled by a flock of Wingull, and then subsequently gets freaked out again by Pikachu, which causes him to accidentally shove Ash. But thankfully, though, before Ash can throttle the kid, because Ash kind of has a quick temper, Ash's friends come down and manage to calm the situation as Brock invites Tori to a luncheon. And this does allow Tori to ingratiate himself with Ash's group, as they do showcase that their willingness to try and help Tori. And what I like is that you can see that Tori is trying to make an effort to get to know the Pokemon that come, because as everyone's eating, some wild Pokemon come out and Brock sets out some food for them. But Tori unfortunately can't bring himself to pet any of the Pokemon, though he does appreciate the effort on Ash and Co.'s part to try and help him. So much so that later in the night, when Ash and Co. meet up with Raph and the other trainers visiting in town, Tori ends up meeting with them as well, and it turns out that he and Yuko managed to make some Pokemon cookies, which he shares with the group. And this in turn ends up with him being invited to a Pokemon play day, as Ash and Co. end up releasing their Pokemon on a playground, and they just kind of have fun. And the thing is, Tori does take part in playing with them without directly interacting with any of the Pokemon, and what I like is that when Ash is not trying to throttle him, he is being patient with Tori, and does try to kind of ease him into the idea of potentially getting close to a Pokemon, with Pikachu even offering himself up to be pet. Unfortunately, that plan doesn't go very well either, because just before you can try petting Pikachu, Ash's Corvish comes in thinking that it's gonna get pets, or maybe it wants to try and give Tori a very forceful hug, and the only reason it doesn't succeed is because Pikachu holds it back. So that plan kind of gets shot out the window, though when Tori has his inevitable freakout, Ash calms him down by saying that it's okay, there's really no rush. However, you have to remember this film is still called Destiny Deoxys, right? So, well, let's go back to talking about Deoxys, shall we? So, you see, the thing is, when Professor Lund wanted doing his experiments on the green stone, and they finally managed to resonate with it, it wound up sending out a pulse right back to the North Pole, and in turn, we see that Deoxys has finally managed to reform himself, and he ends up tracking the pulse right back to LaRue City. And as such, shortly before all this arrived, he's been stationed above LaRue City as, well, it's clear that he's looking for the green stone, even sending out his own aurora in the sky trying to find this other stone, and unfortunately, he's not doing a good job. You see, the thing is, going back to how Deoxys' vision is clouded by other electrical signals, well, the city is not an ideal place for him to be. It is full of technology, people, Pokemon, literally everything in this city is screwing with him, and unfortunately he screws with the city as well, because as he tries sending out his own electromagnetic scan whatever to try and find this green stone, it ends up interfering with whatever electronics he runs it over, and as a result they just end up going haywire. So it's like a big double dose of Deoxys getting screwed over, because no matter what he does, he can't find the stone. As such, wherever he goes, he just tries shoving people out of the way and tries doing everything he can to try and find the stone. But unfortunately, his presence in LaRue City gets the attention of Rayquaza, who senses his energy and realizes that Pokemon from 4 years ago that he tried to get rid of is back, and he ain't having any of that shit. And so, basically, Rayquaza makes a beeline for LaRue City. Thankfully, the security of LaRue City is on top of things, as they can immediately get a trajectory for Rayquaza. Their radar ends up picking up Rayquaza, and while they're initially confused by Rayquaza's presence, all it takes is them reviewing their security footage, and it's then seeing Deoxys fly through, and Professor Lund realizes, oh shit, he's here for Deoxys, we need to evacuate the city, because, well, the last time these two fought, they didn't give a shit about collateral damage, so odds are this second fight isn't going to be any different. So he basically just orders Officer Jenny, who's of course in charge of security, to evacuate the city as quickly as possible. In the meantime, though, back with Ash and Co., and this is before the evacuation order, Tori feels comfortable enough with everybody that he wants to show them his friend, and so he leads them into the domed-off garden area where the little Aurora is, and sure enough, Tori introduces the Aurora to everybody, and everybody seems to get along with it rather well, but then that's when the evacuation order kicks in and everybody is told to leave. Professor Lund tries leaving his lab because he wants to find his son, but he unfortunately doesn't get very far because thanks to Deoxys screwing with the technology around the city, the automatic sidewalks don't work at first, which leads to him kind of getting stuck on one when it does start back up again, and he immediately gets caught in the tide of people who are evacuating the city, to the point where he ends up going on top of a makeshift bridge made from all the cube security bots, and ends up falling into the ocean surrounding it, with Officer Jenny coming up to get him in a boat. Unfortunately, though, that's when Deoxys kind of makes his hand, kind of plays another hand, because, well, with all these people walking around the city, he's making his job a lot harder. And so, Deoxys decides to make it a priority of getting rid of all the distractions, which he had been doing every now and then whenever he encountered a group of Pokemon, simply by shooting out a force of energy that sent Pokemon flying. But in this case, he decides to do something a bit more direct, as we see another one of Deoxys' abilities, which in this case is to duplicate himself. Kinda, sorta. These duplicates aren't like other Deoxyses or whatever, or Deoxy, I don't really know the plural for Deoxys, but the thing is, all the copies of Deoxys are clearly just copies. As their colors are paler, they have no eyes, they clearly just exist for the sake of doing Deoxys' bidding, as he sicks the clones on all the people in Pokemon, and they just lift him away to parts unknown. And as a result, the clones just scatter throughout the city, grabbing whoever they can to try and limit it, to try and make sure that there's as little interference as possible. But in the meantime, that's when Rayquaza arrives and immediately tries attacking Deoxys. However, Deoxys is planned for this, as he immediately goes into his defense form, but instead of just shielding himself, Deoxys throws a shield all around the city, basically cutting everyone off from the outside, while also simultaneously trapping anyone on the inside that hasn't evacuated yet, which unfortunately includes Ash and Co. and Tori, as, like I said, they were in the garden when the evacuation order went off, and, well, with of course with Deoxys' meddling and the whole force field, power is now out throughout the city. So the automatic doors that lead in and out of the garden don't open right away. And by the time Ash and Co. manage to force them open, that's when Deoxys has unleashed his clones and he's just grabbing people, leading to Sid and his Pokemon being captured as well. As such, Tori ends up leading Ash and Co. out through an underground escape route, but, well, Professor Lund is unfortunately on the wrong side of the force field, as he was outside the city when it got thrown up, and so his son is trapped inside, so not a pleasant experience. And unfortunately, though, going back to how the city is now without power, well, apparently the main power source of the city were these giant windmills located in this outer garden area or outer park. I don't know. Point is, these things were generating power through wind, and without any wind, they're not flowing. No flowing means no power. Which I find stupid, by the way. Does that mean that the entirety of the city runs on these giant-ass windmills? Well, I hope beyond hope that it's always windy where they are. Okay, maybe you can argue that because they're by the ocean, there's naturally a current coming from the ocean at all times. So you could argue that possibly that's the reason why they're constantly flowing. But what if they malfunction? What if they get stuck or something? And does that mean that maybe some part of LaRue City is just now without power because one of the windmills won't turn anymore? I feel like that maybe there should be like a backup unit installed. And admittedly, there are backup units that are used throughout the city that do allow for some power, but considering that these things are the main source of power throughout your entire fucking city, I'm just sort of wondering what your backup plan is for the major power should they ever stop doing their jobs. Just saying. Maybe you could store some of that extra power away in case something like this happens. I don't know. Point is, I don't know, it's just a weird flaw in my eyes. It just doesn't make sense. Point is, though, these things aren't turning, no power for the rest of the city. As such, but either way, Ash and Co. do manage to make it back through the underground exit, do manage to make it through the underground tunnel, and they end up going to the main lab, the main lab where Yuko is hiding out. And as such, Yuko does kind of give more of an explanation towards Deoxys. In fact, it was Professor Lund who came up with the name. But however, as she's doing all this, who should show up but Minun, Plusle, and another Pokemon called Munchlax, who we've been seeing every now and then in the movie. Yeah, when the Deoxys clones were grabbing people, they almost grabbed these three, and they escaped through a pipe, and that pipe has led them right to this lab. Also, Munchlax is a dirty, rotten thief because he's been stealing food at certain points in the movie. And many of that food being food that our main characters were in the process of eating, but none lost the instant their backs were turned thanks to Munchlax. So, whatever. However, Minun and Plusle recognize Tori, and they immediately try going to who they think is their new friend by giving him a hug, but again, he makes a run for it, and the only reason they don't try pouncing on him again is because Pikachu comes in, and I'm assuming explains the situation to them. And actually, what I like throughout the rest of the movie is that Minun and Plusle, while still liking Tori enough to hang out with him, do basically kind of keep their distance a little bit. Not to the point where they're like at arm's length from him, but to the point where they are clearly trying not to touch him, which I kind of like. I actually really like that. I just like the idea that Minun and Plusle are just fully understanding, like, oh, he's freaked out. He's freaked out by Pokemon. Okay, we're just making things worse. All right, we'll just be over here. I like that. I just kind of like that. It's a nice bit of respectability, and I do like that they're not trying to force their way through and say, no, we're gonna hug you anyway. I don't know. I just like that. It's a small little thing, but I dig it. Point is, but either way, going back to our main characters, they are unfortunately because the Deoxys clones are still outside grabbing whoever they can. That means that everybody is now currently trapped in this lab, and so And as a result, Ash, Brock, and Tori do try going out to get some supplies, but the end result of that is that Minun ends up getting taken by one of the Deoxys clones, and the group, and unfortunately, while Ash and Co do manage to make it back to the lab with some supplies, including some hot dogs and water, well, it doesn't take long for the Deoxys clones to find them, and they once more have to run further into the lab to get away from them, which in turn does lead to the area of the lab where they're studying that green stone. And well, once they get down there, well, they find out something about the stone. It's the source of the little aurora that Tori is friends with, as it emits from the stone and actually goes up to everyone. But they learn a secondary thing. You see, going back to how Professor Lund and Yuko were studying this thing because they felt it was a part of Deoxys, well, it turns out they were only half right. Because, you see, going back to Rebecca, she's been studying, you see, going back to how, okay, I'm going back a lot. Basically, when Deoxys first arrived in LaRue City and released his aurora, everybody in the city noticed it, Rebecca included, and she scanned the aurora, noticing strange patterns. And then likewise, when Rebecca wound up first meeting this little green aurora that Tori's friends with, she scanned it as well. Well, seeing this aurora in front of her right now, she's able to compare the wavelengths of Deoxys aurora and the stone's aurora, and they're the same thing. Meaning that green stone out down there is not a part of Deoxys, it's another Deoxys, reduced down to its stone form and just kind of having trouble regenerating itself. And everybody is able to deduce that the reason why Deoxys even came to LaRue City at all was because it was genuinely looking for its friend. It wants to find him, and so of course that means that this stone is basically the thing that Deoxys wants, and if he can get it, then he'll probably just leave and let everybody go. Unfortunately, though, nobody really is in any position to try and bring this thing back, because again, the power's cut off everywhere. Even if Professor Lund and Yuko did find the proper wavelength to wake Deoxys B up, as we're going to call it, well, which they did, they can't do it because there's not enough power flowing through the machines in order to get everything going again. As such, the group realizes that if they want to get Deoxys out of here, then they gotta wake Deoxys B up. So as a result, the group begins planning. In this case, it's going to be a two-sided front. One part of the group is going to go out to the windmills and try doing whatever they can to get them up and running. The thing is, in order for these windmills to start going again, they need some extra manpower, which means they need to go and find where Deoxys has been taking all these people, as they're able to deduce that Deoxys was taking them because of their electrical interference. And sure enough, they're able to find where Deoxys was taking them, because after Minun was kidnapped, they were able to watch where Deoxys took them, and it turns out Deoxys brought all these people to this domed-off building where they've all been stored. As such, the plan is that, like I said, half the group will try and go to the windmills and try doing whatever they can to get them up and running, and while in the meantime, Ash and another group of people will try and go out and free all the people that Deoxys has taken. And how they manage to do this is that Rafe actually makes himself bait by intentionally acting as a distraction to allow the other part of the group to escape, and then after they've gotten far enough away, he allows himself and his Blaziken to be taken, and so once he's brought to the building, he basically goes to the door controls and messes with them enough so that they can be opened, but before they can actually get it open, they need an electrical charge, which is where Ash and Tori come in, as they come in with their respective Pokemon, in this case Pikachu and Plusle, and they basically want to send an electrical jolt right through the door, with Minun providing the extra jolt on the other side. And sure enough, it actually works, as it manages to actually open the door, and thus everybody that Deoxys captured is free. Unfortunately, though, while this does allow everyone that Deoxys captured to go out to the windmills and start getting them running again through various means, like water pump, pulley system, generating their own power, unfortunately, though, things are going from bad to worse. You see, going back to how Rafe was trying to distract Deoxys, one of his means of trying to distract him was Blaziken directly attacking Deoxys, and as a result, Deoxys shifted into his defense form to try and protect itself. but in the process, it caused the giant force field surrounding LaRue City to weaken just enough so that when Rayquaza tried launching another attack at it, it allowed it to open up a hole just big enough for Rayquaza to fly through before it sealed up again, meaning that now Rayquaza is in the city and he is once more trying to kill Deoxys because Rayquaza is a dick. That's gonna be the catchphrase for this movie. Rayquaza is a dick. Because in every possible way, every conflict in this movie is caused by this big green asshole refusing to let sleeping dogs lie. But we'll get to that after the plot summary. But anyway, like I said, everybody goes to try and get the windmill starting, and it does manage to generate enough energy so that Yuko is able to get the machine started up, with Pikachu, Mine, and Impulso giving that last extra oomph that they need in order to get the machine charged up again. And as such, the machine charges up, it radiates energy right into the green stone, and sure enough, it's enough that Deoxys B is able to revive itself. And yeah, it does look exactly like Deoxys A, only its powers have a green color scheme instead of a purple one. Either way, Deoxys B is actually happy that it's been freed, and because this thing's already built up a rapport with Tori, it sees him as a friend, as it takes Tori and Ash with it as it goes flying through the city in order to find its friend. Unfortunately, back with Deoxys A, the battle with Rayquaza is going from bad to worse, as Rayquaza is just as brutal now as he was 4 years prior. And unfortunately, though, well, Rayquaza manages to hit the Berserk button for Deoxys, as Deoxys just fucking wails on him first chance he gets, to the point where Rayquaza doesn't even get a single opening in. He's just blasting him from building to building, just not giving him a chance to stop. And it's only thanks to the intervention of Deoxys B that he finally lets up, as Deoxys B ends up taking a hit that was meant for Rayquaza, and so both Deoxyses see each other, and, well, they both realize that the other's a friend. As their auroras actually resonate with one another, and they're both just happy to be together. And it's nice, I dig it, and I think it's what finally calms... And I think this is what finally calms Deoxys A down enough for the force field around the city to be gone completely, and that in turn does start restoring some of the power to the city proper. Unfortunately, Rayquaza is still a dick, and instead decides, oh, now there's two of you. Okay, then I'll just kill you both, as he starts attacking both Deoxyses, and again, it just keeps going throughout the city. And unfortunately, I guess this is another catchphrase in the movie, things go from bad to worse, as in the Deoxys' battle with Rayquaza, they end up going right to the battle tower. Kind of ironic if you can really think about it. Well, not really ironic, coincidental, I suppose. And it turns out that there's that part of the city's power. The part of the city's power is in the tower, and they accidentally end up taking the battle right into it, with Rayquaza unleashing a giant energy beam right at the systems. And well, going back to how the city's power has now been restored, that means all the security bots around the city are now working now as well. Well, it turns out that when Rayquaza wound up hitting the energy source for the battle tower with its hyper beam or whatever it was, well, it sent a power surge right through the security system, and now the security system is going nuts, as the primary security bot ends up kind of going into the red, and it basically just sends the security system into overdrive as all the cube bots all around the city just begin coalescing right into the center of the city, starting to completely cover the battle tower. It's knuckin' futz. And in the midst of all this, Rayquaza ends up getting caught in the middle because these things try swarming him. And as a result, the Deoxyses try to help Rayquaza, convincing him that they're not his enemy, even though they have every reason to hate this prick. But whatever. They're probably thinking ahead and thinking that once the crisis is over, he's going to go back to fighting them. So maybe this is their only chance to get his good graces. I don't know. But even that does little to help them, as all three Pokemon are buried beneath the blocks. As such, everybody still in the city ends up seeing the chaos, but thankfully, with the city now reconnected with the outside world, Professor Lund is able to send a message through the city, which is broadcast on all their large TVs. And this, of course, is a message specifically for his son, because you see, he does know how they can turn the security system off. After all, the whole thing started because the master security robot is going haywire, and as such, how they can stop it is that if someone takes their passport and scans it against the main security bot, it'll unlock the bot just long enough for the people in the security office to just try and link to it and shut it down. And as a result of this, they can use it to calm the security bots down and stop them from causing any further chaos. The only problem is the main leader of the main security bot is currently in the middle of the city, hovering above a giant horde of all these other cubes, so it's getting to that bot's easier said than done. Thankfully, Ash and Tori are more than happy to meet the challenge, and so they basically and they end up managing to get a ride on top of a hot dog cart before it gets swallowed by the cubes. But though thankfully Munchlax offers some aid as he conveniently evolves into Snorlax, allowing them to basically use him as a platform to get to a power line, I guess. Power transformer, yes, let's say. A transformer, which in turn does allow Ash and Tori to get close enough that they can actually try and get to... just Ash. Tori gets kind of caught on the hot dog, but gets caught on the hot dog cart with Minun and Plusle. But in the meantime, like I said, Ash climbs the transformer, and he and Pikachu end up jumping over several blocks in order to get to the security bot. Before Ash can scan his own passport, he drops it, and it's only thanks to Tori throwing his that Ash is able to finally unlock this thing. Though not before Tori gets swept away and almost gets brought into the horde of cubes that are surrounding the battle tower. But Ash does succeed as he gets Tori's passport scanned, and it does in turn allow Officer Jenny and Professor Lund enough time to access the security for this robot and subsequently shut it down, causing all the cubes around LaRue City to just freeze up and shut down. There is going to be a lot of cleanup, but the crisis seems to finally be over, as the security bots are now docile. There's no harm, and with them not going crazy, it allows Rayquaza and the two Deoxyses, or Deoxy, again, I don't know the plural for Deoxys, to get free from under the blocks, and since Rayquaza is still kind of a dick, he doesn't try to help clean up his mess and just kind of flies off to do parts unknown. And yes, I know, he's a wild animal. Why would he know about this? In the counter argument, he was able to figure out that Deoxys wasn't an enemy when Deoxys A and Deoxys B defended him from the cubes, but apparently he's not aware enough to know that this whole shindig is kind of his own fault. But then again, from what I can gather, Rayquaza can be kind of a dick in the game, so what do I know? He was also a boss fight in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, although in that game he was hiding beneath a lake. Go figure. But whatever. Rayquaza fucks off, and ultimately we see that Tori is still on the hot dog cart, but because it's so high up, Minun, and Plusle end up losing their footing. And when Minun and Plusle fall, Tori actually managed to jump out and grab them, which I do like, as it's a nice way of showcasing that his bond with the pair has grown to the point where he actually is comfortable around them. And thankfully, before the three of them become street pizza, Deoxys B comes in and saves them and brings them down to Ash. And what I love is that the instant Minun and Plusle realize that Tori is now comfortable being in physical contact with them, they just start nuzzling the shit out of this kid, and it's fucking adorable. It makes me smile. How dare you, Pokemon? How dare you make me smile? But either way, crisis is past. Rayquaza's not attacking the Deoxys twins anymore, and so, since Deoxys now is back with his friend, the two of them end up flying off into the sky because they don't want to because they're done with Earth. They're going to go into space to, I don't know, blow up Mars or something. I don't fucking know what they do in space. But they leave, and Ash and Tori are happy that things have finally passed. With us getting a nice little touching scene as Professor Lund manages to make it back in the city, and he and his son reunite with them both embracing in a hug. It's some sweet stuff, and I dig it. So, yeah, from there we end up, of course, get our after credits stuff as we see Ash and Co saying goodbye to Tori and his father as the city is now calmed down enough. The security bots are now stable and are now freely being used again as Ash and Co end up getting on a train and leaving alongside all the other out-of-town trainers. And so, while Tori is a little saddened to see them go, he at least could take comfort in that he has two new friends, as Minun and Plusle are now just basically using his shoulder pads as free rides, or his shoulders as free rides. It's adorable, and I love it. And give me those plushes, damn it! I will get those plushes. You can't stop me. And so that's just kind of where the movie ends. Also, Team Rocket was in this movie. Yeah, I'm mentioning that now because they do jackin' shit in this movie. Yeah, again, this is the second time in these movies where Team Rocket are just there. Technically third, if you want to count. Technically third, as their involvement with Jirachi Wishmaker was minimal at best, and they only really caused a problem for like one scene. But yeah, this film, they're really just there. There was no reason for them to even be there. They followed Ash and Co into LaRue City inside a Magikarp submarine, which promptly sank when they accidentally crashed it into a rock. They were starving because they got into the city illegally and thus don't have passports and thus couldn't use anything, and thus couldn't get any access to any of the food vendors. Though it does lead to a funny scene where Jessie intentionally antagonizes a security robot, saying she wants 5 hamburgers well done, and the security bot's response is, "Okay, well done it is," more shocking her. It's hilarious. And then subsequently, they're captured by the Deoxys clones during the evacuation, and then subsequently end up helping out with trying to get the windmill started up by hooking one windmill up to a treadmill which they're constantly on in the bushes. Unfortunately, though, they don't get the memo that the city gets its power back, so even when the windmills start running on their own again, they're still there by the end of the movie. So what can you do? But yeah, that was Destiny Deoxys, and what are my thoughts on this film? I think it's actually pretty damn good. It's not a great film by any means. In fact, if I can list this alongside the other films that I've considered good so far, I honestly think that Spell of the Unknown is my favorite so far. I liked that one the most because I think that the themes presented in it were much deeper and were much better handled than in the other things. Also, yeah, Pokemon Heroes, sorry, 4 films that I liked. So in that regard, I do think Spell of the Unknown is better. But comparing this to something like, say, Latios and Latias, I think it's pretty even. Maybe a little under Latios and Latias, but only by so much. Overall, I actually think it's a pretty damn good movie in and of itself. If I can list one flaw with the movie, at least for me, it's that the plot can feel a little cluttered at times. The thing is, it's kind of hard to tell what's the main conflict going on in the movie. Is the again, we got the stuff with Deoxys and him trying to find his friend, and as a result, Deoxys does kind of act as one of the antagonists in the film, as he's the one that boards off LaRue City and then kidnaps people in order to make his search easier. But the thing is, alongside that, we got the stuff with Rayquaza, we got Tori and his Pokemon phobia, which takes up a good chunk of the first half of the movie, and then likewise the security bot's going off, plus Rayquaza getting in and causing more problems. It can be a little cluttered at times, and I admit it was a little hard to keep track of what was happening at any given time and what was the main conflict at points. With that said, it's not something that it's not something that's going to cause your eyes to start rolling or anything. It's just something I noticed as I was watching the movie. Otherwise, it didn't really affect my enjoyment of the movie as a whole. In fact, I dare say that the movie, I think, is rather strong in terms of plot. For starters, let's talk about Tori as a character. I like Tori. I think he's a good kid. What I like is that unlike Sam Oak, Tori does have more established personality and character to him, and I like the conflict with him right off the bat, as it actually does feel like a good one, and I like how they address it in the movie and how Tori is able to overcome his fear of Pokemon. Which I do enjoy, and again, that kind of sucks when you live in a world where all the animals are Pokemon. You have developed a phobia of them. It's like developing a phobia of all animals, even the cute ones. That's actually kind of sad. Are there people like that in the real world? I bet there are. I'm getting off topic. Point is, how they treat Tori's fear is actually a really nice character arc. I like how the way he reacts is actually a pretty realistic reaction, as he feels closed off and afraid and distant whenever he approaches anyone that has anything to do with Pokemon. And it does feel realistic, and it never feels like it's coming from a place of malice, as you can see Tori's reluctance in both engaging with these people while also trying to get away from them. You can tell there's a part of him that does not want to be afraid of Pokemon. You can tell that you can see it in his expressions and how he acts. Like Pokemon still scare the shit out of him, but at the same time, he's trying. He's trying to be friendly, and we see that he does still have a vent in the form of Deoxys B, whom he befriends and talks to in secret. It's just that, again, because of his phobia, he's intentionally distancing himself from other people, even though he really doesn't want to. And again, we established from the get-go, he's not a jerk. He's actually a pretty decent kid. When he and Ash got roped into doing a tag team battle, while he didn't want to take part in the battle, at the same time, he didn't want to let Ash down, and so he tried to do whatever he could so that Ash could be a part of the battle. And as he took Ash's Pokemon and and tried using it for himself in the battle, but because of his own phobia, he basically froze up and didn't really know what to do, especially since he's not a Pokemon trainer. So why would he be able to do anything with a Pokemon if he didn't know how to train it? So, of course, that makes sense. But what I liked about the movie is that when Ash and Co. decided to make it their business to try and help him, he is open to it. Yeah, there's some animosity because, again, he has a phobia of Pokemon, but I like the way that Ash and Co. gradually try warming him up to it. And to kind of go back to how Tori is shown to be a rather decent kid, he's actually taking to their friendship rather well, and he understands what they're doing and is not resistant to it. He is trying to get over his phobia, as he does take delight in seeing Ash and Co.'s Pokemon be happy, as well as seeing all the wild Pokemon that Brock feeds during their luncheon, and it's nice, and I dig it, and I do like just seeing him just take baby steps here and there to try and get closer to Pokemon. Going back to the luncheon scene, when Ash says that maybe Tori, there's a scene where Ash asks Tori if he could possibly pet any of the Pokemon, and so Pikachu offers one of his paws out to Tori, and he doesn't try and force it or anything, but Tori tries to reach out, but he just can't do it. And likewise, the second time that Ash and Pikachu try to get him to pet Pikachu, again, it's not forced. And the only reason it goes wrong is because Corfish wanted to be the center of attention. Kind of reminds me of that dog in that case. And that turn causes Tori to freak out some more. But again, I like how they're patient with Tori. It's treated rather well because, again, Tori is not written as a bad character. He is a very nice kid, and he's trying his best to overcome his phobia. And likewise, the more comfortable he gets around Ash and Co., the more he opens up to them. The more he comes out of his shell, the friendlier he gets to them. The point where he does end up showing them Deoxys B in its Aurora form. It's nice, and I like it. And throughout the film, you can see that Tori is fully aware of his flaws and is trying to work on them. Going back to when the Deoxys clones wound up kidnapping Minun, well, Tori feels guilty for that because the part of the reason why he didn't try to save Minun was because of his phobia, and he thinks that if he just wasn't afraid of touching a little adorable Minun, then Minun would have been saved, and as a result, he feels more personally responsible. Although what I like is that while Plusle is clearly distraught over the fact that its other half, I guess, was taken away, it doesn't hold anything against Tori. It still hangs out with him for the rest of the movie, and when both Minun and Plusle are reunited, they're still hanging around with this kid. So clearly, there's no hard feelings, especially since by the end they're snuggling this kid to hell and back because they are fucking adorable. So I like that, and again, I just like seeing Tori slowly overcome his phobia and this character flaw. And before you interpret that as me criticizing his character, no, it's like a natural character flaw. Everyone has them. Get over it. But again, I like that. It's nice. And so by the end, when Tori does finally overcome his fear enough that he actually tries saving Minun and Plusle when they end up falling from a great height, it's nice. It feels natural, and it does feel actually earned. It's nice. I do dig it. Again, I doubt this would cure his phobia of Pokemon completely, but at the very least, it's a start because now he's got a pair of Pokemon that he's best friends with and who are now refusing to leave his side. It's sweet. I like it, and as a result, I do actually like Tori. He's not an annoying kid. He does pull his weight. He is smart and does know his way around things, and likewise, while his phobia does cause him does kind of cause some problems every now and then, it all feels natural, and I do like that throughout the film he is constantly aware of these problems and working to try and overcome them. It's nice, it's nice, it's sweet, the payoff for it is good, so overall I do like that. Likewise, I actually really like Deoxys as a villain in this movie. I call him the villain because he's one of the primary antagonists, but when it comes down to it, up until Deoxys A and B reunite, Deoxys A is a neutral force. The only thing Deoxys A cares about in this entire movie is trying to find Deoxys B, and as a result, he really does not give a shit who or what is in its way in order to get it. It just wants to find his friend. Now, it's not actively hostile towards anybody in his way, unless that thing is hostile towards him, but he also clearly doesn't give a shit about collateral damage. Case in point, when he first crashed on Earth and he did battle with Rayquaza, he clearly did not care that there was a campsite on standby where innocent people were going to get hurt. Rayquaza was hurting him. Rayquaza was hurting him, so his first priority wasn't get away from the civilians. His first priority was take the giant green dragon out of the sky. So of course, so it makes sense. And then likewise, when Deoxys begins kidnapping people, it's not because he haunts them or some big grand plan or anything. It's quite literally just that the people are in his way. Because of all the electrical signals that are being spread out all across LaRue City, he can't get a good reading on where Deoxys B is. And so his solution to try and fix all that is just to move all the people out of the way to make the search easier. And again, it's not something that anybody wants, because he's taking people without any real consent. So that's in and of itself sort of a villainous act. But throughout it all, he's a neutral force. In fact, the whole reason that the entire plot of this movie happens at all is because of Rayquaza. You could argue that Rayquaza acted the way he did because Deoxys came to Earth, but really think about this. Every single conflict in this movie, in some way, is tied to Rayquaza. Okay, maybe Tori's phobia of Pokemon was not tied to Rayquaza, as that phobia was wound up directly correlating from a stampede that was caused because of Deoxys' arrival on Earth. So that in and of itself is probably not caused by Rayquaza. But Deoxys being reduced down to a single stone, that's Rayquaza's fault. The city being cut off from everyone, Rayquaza's fault as well. The Deoxys going on the offensive and nearly wiping out and nearly damaging a lot of LaRue City, again, Rayquaza's fault. And then likewise, the security system going haywire, that was directly Rayquaza's fault. I'm gonna just say this right now. This movie would not have happened if not for Rayquaza. You could argue this up with Tori would have happened regardless, because again, that phobia was tied to Deoxys' arrival, but ultimately the rest of the conflict in this movie were all caused by him in some way, shape, or form. All of this in some way is Rayquaza's fault, and the only reason he started this fight was because he was basically a kid that didn't want his next door neighbor playing on his lawn. So yeah, I'm just gonna say Rayquaza's kind of a dick in this movie. And again, you can say Rayquaza's a wild animal. Of course, he doesn't really understand the ramifications of his actions. But again, clearly he's smart enough to recognize that Deoxys is not a threat when both Deoxys try and defend him from the security cubes. So I don't fucking know. But I don't know. That's just a mean beating a dead horse right there. My point is this. I do actually like like I said, Deoxys is a secondary villain I do like. Rayquaza's more of the primal force, but I do like seeing Deoxys doing what he does throughout the film. Again, what he's doing is direct in opposition to what the heroes are trying to accomplish, but he's not doing it out of malice or anything. He just wants to find his friend. And I kind of like that. It's relatable. Nothing about it is harmful or anything. It's just that his means of trying to get his end goal is directly putting people in harm's way, so they need to find a way to calm him down. And the easiest way to calm him down is just to give him his friend back. So in a way, they end up helping Deoxys by reviving Deoxys B. It's nice. I do kind of like that. And I'd be lying if I said that seeing both Deoxys unite, I guess, in the climax of the movie isn't a nice sight, especially when they combine their auroras, which does create a genuinely beautiful sight. In fact, I will dare say that both of their auroras by themselves are actually pretty nice to look at. In fact, going off of that, I like the effects in the movie, for the most part. It's still early 2000s CGI, so it still has some jank in a few areas that make it look weird, but for the most part, when it works, I think it works well. The auroras, I think, look beautiful. The security bots themselves look amazing. It's actually pretty, and again, the film itself is just damn pretty to look at. Again, the environments, the sets, the designs, all of it looks so intricate and beautiful, and just on the standard that you would expect from a Pokemon movie. So in that regard, it still works, and it still is a nice movie to look at. So I guess and of course, you got the kick-ass action. In fact, that's actually another thing I liked. The action, of course, for a Pokemon movie, is still genuinely kick-ass, and I loved that. I loved seeing it in action. I loved seeing despite the collateral damage, I liked seeing Deoxys and Rayquaza duking it out, which of course led to some genuinely cool action, even if there was a lot of collateral damage as a result. It's just fun. It's cool. It's fun. So I guess when it comes down to it, for me, what makes this film work is that I like the villain in the form of Deoxys, he acts as a nice I like how he's just kind of a neutral force, and all he really wants is just to save his friend. I like Rayquaza can be kind of intrusive, but his inclusion does lead to some genuinely kick-ass action scenes. The environments still look beautiful as hell, and the main central focus being kind of on friendship and bonding and growing close, like with Deoxys and Deoxys B. And likewise, Tori with him trying to grow closer to Pokemon despite his fears, I do think is a really good central theme, and I think is focused on just enough in the right way. In fact, another benefit to showcasing Tori's conflict, to showcasing Tori slowly trying to overcome his fear of Pokemon, is the conflict that comes with that, as he is aware of how much of a hindrance it is to his friends and the other Pokemon, and likewise, it does lead to some good character growth when he realizes this weakness, feels guilt for it, and just keeps trying to improve. It's nice, it's sweet, and it does lead to some good stuff. So, on the whole, I feel like Destiny Deoxys, for what it is just a pretty damn good movie. I love the visuals. I love I like Deoxys as a villain, and I like Deoxys as not as the villain, but as the antagonist, and how it builds up. I like the conflict with him trying to get his friend back. I like the personal character journeys with Tori and how he tries to overcome his fear of Pokemon, and how that pays off in the end. The climax can be a bit cluttered, and while admittedly the climax can be a bit cluttered, it does still have a strong emotional ending that I do think works out. As a result, I do think Destiny Deoxys is a pretty good movie. It's not my favorite Pokemon movie by any means, but it's a pretty damn good one in and of itself. And like I said, I do think I'd probably put it around the same level as Latios and Latias. Maybe I put it a little above it when I really stop and think about it, but both of them I think are pretty good in their own regards, and both of them have their strengths that I think make them both very good films. So, yeah, on the whole, I think Destiny Deoxys is a good time, and if you're interested, go check it out. I think you'll be entertained. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video. I thank you for watching, and tune in next week as we look at the final Pokemon movie to feature the 4Kids cast of English voice actors, as we actually also see the return of another Pokemon who we saw in an earlier movie with Lucario and the Mystery of Mew.